Only one Terran soldier? The Academy discovered what humanity could do. The underestimated species, the Galactic Defense Institute stood like a monument to military excellence on the red cliffs of Korthar. For 300 cycles, it had trained the finest warriors from across 70 species. The towers of crystalline metal reached toward twin moons, and inside those walls, legends were born. Generals who had conquered systems, strategists who had ended wars, and peacekeepers who had united worlds all began their journeys here. The Institute accepted only the best, and it produced only excellence. Commander Velrus of the Scareen walked through the grand corridor with measured steps. His scales reflected the morning light filtering through tall windows. He was a veteran of 40 campaigns, a teacher for 15 years, and he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had seen everything the galaxy could offer. Today, however, something unusual waited in his office. A human had been assigned as an instructor. Velrus entered his chamber and activated the holographic display. The file appeared before him, floating in blue light. Sergeant Maya Chen, Terran Defense Corps, age 32 in Earth years. Combat experience in 3 minor conflicts. Specialization in unconventional warfare and adaptive tactics. The image showed a woman of average height with dark hair pulled back, steady brown eyes, and a calm expression. Nothing about her appearance suggested exceptional ability. Velrus made a low rumbling sound in his throat, something between doubt and dismissal. Humans were new to the Galactic Alliance, barely 50 years since first contact. They were small compared to most warrior species. They had no natural armor like the Scareen, no enhanced strength like the Vrothian giants, no telepathic coordination like the Mindari. Their technology was adequate but unremarkable. Yet the Alliance Council had insisted on including human instructors in major military academies. Velrus found this decision puzzling at best and political at worst. A knock sounded at the door. It opened before Velrus could respond, and Maya Chen walked in. She wore the simple gray uniform of the Institute with the Earth insignia on her shoulder. She stopped at the appropriate distance and offered the traditional salute of respect, right hand to heart. Her movements were precise without being rigid. "Commander Velrus," she said. Her voice was clear and carried no trace of nervousness. Sergeant Chen reporting for instructor assignment. Velrus studied her for a long moment. "Welcome to the Institute, Sergeant. I have reviewed your file. Your experience is noted, though I confess I am uncertain what unique perspective your species brings to military education." Maya smiled slightly. "I understand your hesitation, Commander. Humans are often underestimated. We are used to it." Velrus tilted his head. This was not the response he expected. Most junior instructors would have defended their credentials or shown offense. This human simply acknowledged his doubt without defensiveness. "Interesting. You will begin tomorrow," Velrus said. "Your first class consists of third-cycle cadets. They are advanced students who have studied under the finest minds in the galaxy. I expect you to maintain the Institute's standards." Maya nodded. "I will do more than maintain them, Commander. I will expand them." After she left, Velrus stood alone in his office, wondering if that statement was confidence or arrogance. Time would reveal the answer. The next morning, Maya entered Training Hall 7 to find 60 cadets waiting. They represented 12 different species, each one sitting in groups based on their homeworld. The Scareen cadets occupied the front rows, their powerful frames and sharp eyes watching her with barely concealed amusement. Behind them sat the Yeltari, with their crystalline skin that refracted light in rainbow patterns. The insectoid creche clicked their mandibles softly in what might have been conversation. Near the back, a pair of Vrothian giants looked down at her with expressions of polite curiosity. Maya walked to the center of the room without rushing. She placed her data tablet on the podium and looked across the faces watching her. Some seemed curious, others appeared skeptical. A few looked openly dismissive. "Good morning," she began. "I am Sergeant Maya Chen from Earth. I know what you are thinking. You are wondering what a human, a member of one of the weakest species in the Alliance, can possibly teach you about warfare." The room stirred. A few cadets exchanged glances. One of the Scareen in the front, a cadet named Torvik, leaned back in his seat with his arms crossed. "You are wondering," Maya continued, "if this is some kind of political gesture. You have trained under Scareen warriors who can break stone with their hands. You have learned from Mindari telepaths who can coordinate attacks across kilometers without speaking. You have studied Vrothian siege tactics that have conquered fortress worlds. What could a fragile human add to that knowledge? She paused, letting the silence fill the room. Then she smiled. I will show you something your other instructors could not. I will show you how the weak defeat the strong, how the outnumbered survive the overwhelming, how species like mine, who should have been extinct 100 times over, not only survived but thrived. Torvik spoke up, his voice carrying the rough gravel of his species. With respect, instructor, survival is not the same as victory. The strong dominate because strength wins wars, Maya nodded. A fair point. Let me ask you all a question. In your military history classes, you have studied the Krenthak invasion of Cycle 213. The Krenthak brought 5 million soldiers against the border colonies. How many defending troops did those colonies have? 2 million, answered a Yelthari cadet. They were defeated in 6 weeks, correct, Maya said. Now tell me, in that same war, there was one battle where 12,000 defenders held a position against 90,000 Krenthak for 40 days. The attackers eventually withdrew. Which species were those defenders? The room went quiet. Cadets looked at each other, searching their memories. No one seemed to know. They were Threnxi, Maya said. The Threnxi are not warriors. They are scientists and philosophers. They have no military tradition. Their bodies are even weaker than humans. But they held that position using strategy, deception, terrain, and psychological warfare. They made the Krenthak believe the position was more defended than it was. They made every attack costly. They made the enemy doubt. And eventually the strong retreated from the weak. She walked along the front row, her footsteps the only sound. That is what I will teach you. Not how to be stronger, because most of you already are strong. I will teach you how to think like someone who cannot rely on strength. How to find advantages where others see none. How to turn enemy confidence into enemy weakness. Torvik uncrossed his arms slightly. And humans do this naturally? Maya stopped and looked at him directly. Humans do this necessarily. Our homeworld tried to kill us for millions of years. Predators hunted us. Diseases struck us. Weather destroyed our shelters. We had no claws, no venom, no armor, no speed. We survived because we learned to think ahead, to plan, to adapt, to work together, and to never give up even when giving up made logical sense. She returned to the podium. Tomorrow, you will participate in a simulation. It is called the Garrison Defense Scenario. You have all run it before. The record completion time is 17 minutes with minimal casualties. I will run it with you, and we will approach it differently. The class ended with more questions than answers. As cadets filed out, Maya heard their conversations. Some remained skeptical. Others seemed intrigued. Torvik lingered near the door, watching her with an expression that might have been respect or might have been calculation. That evening, Commander Velrus reviewed the classroom recordings. He watched Maya's introduction again, noting how she had acknowledged cadet doubts directly rather than avoiding them. He observed how she used historical examples they already knew but had overlooked. Most interesting was her final statement about human survival. It was not boasting. It was simply fact. Velrus closed the file and looked out his window at the training grounds below. Several species were running combat drills under harsh lights. They moved with power and precision, but as he watched, he wondered if there was something those drills did not teach. Something about fighting when power and precision were not enough. The next day would bring answers. The garrison defense simulation had been designed by Scarine military architects as an impossible scenario. Defending forces always lost. The only question was how long they lasted and how many enemies they took down before falling. It was meant to teach cadets about honorable defeat and tactical retreat. Maya had said they would approach it differently. Velrus found himself curious, despite his doubts, about what a human might do with an impossible scenario. In his experience, warriors faced with the impossible either fought bravely until the end or retreated to fight another day. He suspected Maya Chen would do neither. And that possibility, more than anything else, made him uneasy. The impossible victory, the simulation chamber filled with cadets just after dawn. The garrison defense scenario was legendary at the Institute. Every military student ran it at least once during their training, and every student failed. The simulation placed defenders inside a fortified position with limited ammunition, no reinforcements, and enemy forces that outnumbered them 10-1. The enemies kept coming in waves until the defenders were overwhelmed. The lesson was clear. Understand when a position is lost and preserve your forces for battles you can win. Maya stood in the control room above the simulation floor with Commander Velrus beside her. Below, 60 cadets prepared themselves, checking weapons that fired harmless training pulses and reviewing the compound layout on their tactical displays. The facility was a standard military outpost with walls, guard towers, and a central command building. It had been modeled after real installations across the galaxy. "Commander," Maya said, "I would like to request a modification to the scenario." Velrus turned his scaled head toward her. "This simulation has remained unchanged for 30 years. It is a standard across Alliance military training." "I understand," Maya replied, "but I am not asking to make it easier. I want to make it harder." Velrus blinked slowly, a gesture of surprise among his species. "Explain." Maya pointed to the holographic display showing the battlefield. "The current scenario sends enemy waves at predictable intervals from 3 directions. I want enemies to come from all 4 directions at random intervals. I also want to reduce our ammunition by 20% and remove 2 of the guard towers." The commander stared at her. "You want to make an already impossible scenario worse?" "Yes," Maya said simply, "because I am not teaching my cadets how to delay defeat. I am teaching them how to create victory from nothing." Velrus considered this. Then he made a gesture of agreement, something between a nod and a bow. "Very well, Sergeant Chen. I will authorize these changes. But understand that when your cadets fail worse than any class in Institute history, this reflects on both of you." "Then it is fortunate," Maya said with a slight smile, "that we will not fail." The simulation began. Cadets took positions along the walls and in towers. Torvik, the Skareen who had questioned Maya the day before, commanded the northern wall. A Mindari named Sesith coordinated the eastern defenses using her species' natural telepathic communication with other Mindari in the group. The Varathian giants, Kroll and Marna, held the most vulnerable southern approach where the removed towers had left gaps in coverage. The first wave appeared on scanners. Enemies approached from the north and east simultaneously, moving fast. Standard training dictated meeting them at the walls with concentrated fire, but Maya's voice came through every cadet's communicator. "Hold your fire. Let them reach the outer markers." Confusion rippled through the defenders. Torvik's voice responded immediately. "Instructor, if we wait, they will reach optimal assault range. We will take more casualties. Trust the plan, Cadet Torvik. Hold your fire." The enemy forces, holographic projections that moved with realistic artificial intelligence, advanced confidently. They crossed the outer defensive markers where normally they would have been met with heavy resistance. They moved closer, spreading into standard attack formations. They were now only 50 meters from the walls. "Now," Maya said calmly, "fire on the command units only. Ignore the infantry." The cadets hesitated for only a second before following orders. Shots rang out, targeting the larger enemy units that coordinated attacks. Within seconds, the enemy formations lost cohesion. Infantry units slowed, uncertain. Some stopped entirely. "Torvik," Maya continued, "take your squad out the northern gate. Circle behind them while they are confused." Commander Velrus leaned forward in the observation room. "That is a violation of defensive doctrine. You never leave a fortified position to engage superior forces." "Watch," Maya said quietly. Torvik and 5 other cadets exited through a hidden sally port in the northern wall. They moved quickly through terrain the enemy had already crossed, terrain the enemy now considered secure. They struck from behind, causing panic. The enemy infantry, already leaderless, began retreating. The first wave was broken without the defenders firing more than 30 shots. The second wave came minutes later, this time from all 4 directions as Maya had requested. The cadets looked at their tactical displays with growing concern. They were now surrounded. Conventional wisdom said to consolidate forces and defend the strongest position. "Sesith," Maya called to the Mindari coordinator. "What is the enemy's greatest advantage right now?" The Mindari cadet paused, her crystalline eyes reflecting light as she thought. "They surround us. They have multiple attack vectors. We cannot defend everywhere equally." "Correct," Maya said. "So we will not defend everywhere. We will defend nowhere." Velrus made a sound of disbelief. "That makes no sense." Maya continued speaking to the cadets. "Everyone abandon the walls. Move to the central building. Board up the lower entrances. Position yourselves at upper windows." The cadets followed orders, though their confusion was evident. They retreated from perfectly good defensive walls into a single building. The enemy forces reached the compound unopposed and began spreading through it, searching for defenders. Now, Maya said. They are inside our walls but inside our trap. They are separated from their command structure. They are moving through unfamiliar terrain. Seseth, have your Mindari coordinate sniper fire. Target enemy scouts and communicators only. Make them blind. The strategy became clear. The enemy was inside the compound, but could not find the defenders who rained precise fire from elevated positions. Every shot eliminated an enemy who was trying to coordinate others or report positions. The enemy's strength, their numbers, became a weakness as they crowded into tight spaces and blocked each other's movement. Kroll, Maya called to one of the Vrothians. Take your partner and seal the main gate behind them. The two giants moved with surprising speed for their size, using their strength to manually close and lock the heavy gates. The enemy was now trapped inside the compound with no retreat path and no clear target to assault. The enemy forces began to panic. Without coordination, without scouts, trapped in an unfamiliar space, they became a mob. The cadets picked them off systematically from protected positions. Within 15 minutes, the simulation ended. All enemy forces eliminated. Defender casualties 0. The simulation chamber fell silent. Cadets looked at each other in shock. They had just achieved what every military student believed was impossible. They had won the garrison defense scenario with a perfect score. Commander Velra stood motionless in the observation room. He had witnessed something he could not fully explain. Maya had taken every principle of defensive warfare and reversed it. She had surrendered advantageous positions. She had divided her forces. She had allowed enemies inside her walls, and every choice had been correct. The commander descended to the simulation floor where cadets were removing their training gear. They spoke in excited voices, replaying the battle in their minds. Maya stood to one side, making notes on her data tablet. Sergeant Chen, Velra said. His voice carried across the chamber, silencing all other conversation. That was the most unorthodox tactical display I have witnessed in my career. Maya looked up. Did it violate any Institute regulations, Commander? Felrus was quiet for a moment. No. It violated conventional doctrine, but doctrine is not regulation. What you taught today was effective, even if it was radical. Torvik approached, his respect now evident in his posture. Instructor, you made us do the opposite of everything we have been taught. How did you know it would work? Maya smiled. Because I knew what the simulation designers expected. They expected defenders to be predictable, to follow standard doctrine. The scenario is impossible only if you play by the rules it wants you to follow. Humans learned long ago that when the rules guarantee defeat, you change the rules. A Yelthari cadet named Priska spoke up, her voice carrying the musical tones of her species. But how do you know which rules to change? How do you know which orthodox thinking to abandon? That, Maya said, is what we will practice. Every battle is different. Every enemy is different. You must learn to see the situation as it truly is, not as your training tells you it should be. You must learn to recognize when strength is weakness and weakness is strength. She looked around at the assembled cadets. Today you learned that walls can be prisons for your enemies, that superior numbers can become confusion, that retreat can be bait. These are human lessons, learned across thousands of years of fighting opponents stronger than us. The cadets absorbed this in silence. Something had shifted in the training hall. The human instructor was no longer a curiosity or a political appointment. She was someone who had shown them a new way to think about warfare. Commander Velrus cleared his throat. Class dismissed. Cadet Torvik, Cadet Seseth remained behind. After the others left, Velrus addressed the two senior cadets. You both performed well today. I am assigning you to assist Sergeant Chen in preparing for the War Games next cycle. The War Games were the Institute's most prestigious competition. Teams from different species competed in complex scenarios that tested everything from tactical thinking to leadership under pressure. The winning team received honors that often launched distinguished military careers. Torvik and Seseth exchanged glances. Commander, Torvik said carefully with respect, teams for the War Games are usually composed of a single species. It allows for better coordination based on natural abilities. I am aware, Velrus said. This year we will experiment. Sergeant Chen will coach a mixed species team. She will select members from all available cadets. If her methods are truly effective, they should work with any combination of species. Maya had been quiet during this exchange. Now she spoke. Commander, I accept the assignment, but I want complete authority over training methods and team selection. Velrus met her eyes. You will have it. But understand that the war games are watched by military leaders across the Alliance. If your team fails, it will confirm suspicions that human tactical thinking is interesting but impractical. And if we win, Maya said, it will prove that human methods can enhance any species' natural strengths. The commander gave a slow nod. Then let us see what happens when Earth teaches the galaxy a new way to fight. The human factor, the preparation for the war games consumed the next 4 weeks. Maya selected her team carefully, choosing cadets not for their raw abilities but for their willingness to learn and adapt. Her final roster included Torvik the Skareen warrior, Sesith the Mindari coordinator, Kroll and Marna the Vrothian giants, Priska the Yelthari scout, 3 Kresh infantry soldiers, and 2 humans from Earth's own military academy exchange program. It was the most diverse team ever assembled for the competition. Other teams watched their training with amusement. The Skareen warband and all Skareen unit practiced traditional assault formations with devastating efficiency. The Mindari collective moved as one mind, their telepathic coordination allowing instantaneous tactical adjustments. The Vrothian hammer specialized in breakthrough tactics that had shattered defensive lines on a dozen worlds. Each team was composed of a single species with decades or centuries of unified military tradition. Maya's mixed team looked chaotic by comparison. They argued frequently. Their different biologies meant they moved at different speeds and had different combat styles. The Kresh wanted to swarm enemies with numbers. The Vrothians wanted to anchor defensive positions. Torvik wanted aggressive assaults. Sesith wanted careful coordination. Commander Velrus observed their practices with growing concern. 3 weeks before the war games, he summoned Maya to his office. Sergeant, your team lacks cohesion. They fight each other more than they fight the training simulations. Maya remained calm. They are learning, Commander. Not just tactics, but how to work with beings who think differently than they do. That takes time. Time we do not have, Velrus said. The war games begin in 21 days. Every other team is ready. Yours appears ready to collapse. Appearances can deceive, Maya replied. Trust the process, but even she had doubts. That evening she gathered her team in the training hall. They sat in their usual species groups, the physical distance between them reflecting their lack of unity. Maya stood in the center and spoke quietly. We are not going to win the war games. Silence filled the room. Shock registered on every face. We are not going to win, Maya continued. Because right now we are 12 individuals pretending to be a team. You work together when I tell you to, but you do not think together. You do not trust together. Torvik stood. Instructor, we have trained harder than any team here. We have learned your human tactics. What more do you want from us? Maya met his eyes. I want you to tell me why you are here. Why did you join this team when you could have joined the Skareen warband with your own species? Torvik hesitated. Then he said, because you showed me that there are ways to fight I had never considered. I wanted to learn them. Maya nodded and turned to Sesith. And you? Why are you here instead of with the Mindari collective? The telepathic coordinator's crystalline skin flickered with soft light. Because my people's greatest strength, our mental connection, is also a limitation. We think alike. We make the same assumptions. Your methods are different. Chaotic but effective. One by one, Maya asked each team member why they had chosen this diverse, difficult team over the easier path of staying with their own species. Each answer revealed the same theme. They wanted to grow beyond what their species' traditions taught them. Then Maya asked a different question. What is each species' greatest weakness? The room stirred uncomfortably. No warrior liked admitting weakness. I will start, Maya said. Humans are physically fragile. We tire easily. We are weaker than almost every combat species. Torvik, what is the Skareen weakness? The warrior growled softly. We are overconfident. We rely on strength and sometimes miss clever solutions. Sesith? Maya prompted. The Mindari spoke carefully. We depend on our mental network. When communications are disrupted, we struggle to act independently. Around the room, each species representative named their weakness. The Vrothians admitted they were slow and inflexible. The Kresh acknowledged they panicked without strong leadership. The Yelthari confessed they avoided direct conflict when possible. Now, Maya said, what if we protected each other's weaknesses? What if Torvik's strength covered human fragility? What if human adaptability helped when Mindari communications failed? What if Kresh numbers supported Vrothian positions and Yelthari scouting guided Kresh swarms? Kroll, one of the Vrothians, spoke in his deep rumbling voice. You are saying we should not try to be the best team of individuals, but the best team of differences. Exactly, Maya said. That is the human factor. Humans survived not because we were the strongest or fastest or smartest, but because we learned to work with each other despite our differences. We learned that diversity is not weakness, it is strength. Something shifted in the training hall that night. The cadets began sitting together across species lines. They began asking each other about their homeworlds, their training, their fears. They began to see each other not as different species but as teammates with complementary abilities. The training intensified, but the atmosphere changed. When Torvik charged too aggressively, Sesith's calm guidance slowed him down. When the Mindari network was jammed in simulations, the human cadets helped them make independent decisions. When enemies flanked the slow Vrothians, the quick Yelthari scouts warned them in time. 3 days before the war games, they ran a practice simulation against an artificial intelligence programmed to use the tactics of the Scareen War Band. Maya's team won decisively. The next day, they faced a simulation based on Mindari collective tactics. They won again. By the eve of the competition, they had defeated simulated versions of every major team they would face. Commander Velrus watched the final practice with different eyes than before. Where he once saw chaos, he now saw coordination. Where he once saw weakness, he now saw adaptability. The mixed species team moved like water, flowing around obstacles, filling gaps, supporting each other instinctively. The war games began with ceremonial presentations. 50 teams from across the Institute marched into the great arena, while thousands of spectators watched from elevated platforms. Each team wore their species' traditional colors. The Scareen War Band entered in crimson and black. The Mindari Collective shimmered in crystalline white. The Vrothian Hammer wore steel gray. Maya's team entered last wearing a uniform they had designed themselves, a combination of every species' colors blended together. They looked like a rainbow compared to the uniform teams ahead of them. Some spectators laughed. Others whispered skeptically. The first event was a tactical puzzle. Teams had to navigate a hostile environment while accomplishing 3 objectives under time pressure. Most teams split into specialized groups. Maya's team did the opposite. They stayed together, using each species' abilities in sequence. The Yelthari scout found the safest path. The Vrothians cleared obstacles. The Kresh secured positions. The Mindari maintained communication. The Scareen and humans provided tactical leadership. They finished 3rd overall, a respectable showing. The second event was a direct combat simulation. Here the specialist teams excelled. The Scareen Warband dominated with aggressive power. The Mindari Collective overwhelmed opponents with coordinated strikes. Maya's team finished in the middle ranks, neither impressive nor embarrassing. After the second event, rankings showed the Scareen Warband in first place, the Mindari Collective second, and the Vrothian Hammer third. Maya's mixed team was ranked 12th. It seemed the skeptics had been correct. Diversity was interesting but not competitive. The final event was announced, the Crucible. It was a scenario few cadets had trained for because it was new this cycle. Teams would face a situation with no clear objective, no time limit, and no defined victory condition. They would be evaluated on their ability to identify problems, create solutions, and adapt to changing circumstances. Maya smiled when she heard the description. This was exactly the type of challenge humans excelled at. Ambiguity did not frighten them. It energized them. The Crucible began. Teams entered a simulated city under siege. The scenario provided no instructions. Fire spread through buildings. Civilians needed rescue. Enemy forces approached from multiple directions. Infrastructure was collapsing. Most teams immediately fell back on their training. The Scareen Warband engaged the enemy forces directly. The Mindari Collective tried to establish a defensive perimeter. The Vrothian Hammer began fortifying positions. Maya's team did something different. They split into 3 groups, each with mixed species composition. One group rescued civilians using Yelthari scouts to find trapped people and Vrothian strength to clear rubble. Another group fought fires using Kresh coordination and Mindari problem-solving. The third group, led by Torvik and the human cadets, engaged enemy forces using hit-and-run tactics. The simulation grew more complex. New fires erupted. More civilians appeared. Enemy reinforcements arrived. Other teams became overwhelmed, trying to do everything at once. Maya's team continued adapting. They redirected rescued civilians to help fight fires. They used enemy pursuit to lead attackers into trapped buildings. They turned every problem into an opportunity. Hours passed. Teams began withdrawing from the scenario, accepting defeat. The Scareen warband withdrew when enemy forces overwhelmed their positions. The Mindari Collective withdrew when fires cut off their communication network. One by one, specialized teams fell victim to scenarios that challenged their particular strengths. Maya's team kept going. When one approach failed, they tried another. When they ran out of resources, they improvised. When the situation seemed hopeless, they found hope anyway. They did not fight to win. They fought to survive. And in surviving, they began to thrive. 12 hours into the crucible, only 3 teams remained. 16 hours in, only Maya's team continued. The spectators, many of whom had left to rest, returned to watch. Something unprecedented was happening. The mixed species team that everyone had dismissed was outlasting everyone else. At 20 hours, the simulation masters increased the difficulty, testing the limits. At 24 hours, they added complications never used in training. Maya's team adapted to everything. Torvik's strength supported Sesith's intelligence. The Vrothian's steadiness anchored the Kresh's speed. The Yelthari's caution balanced human risk-taking. They were no longer 12 individuals. They were one organism with 12 different abilities. At 30 hours, the simulation ended. Not because Maya's team failed, but because the scenario had no more challenges to present. They had accomplished what the simulation designers thought was impossible. They had stabilized the city, defeated the enemy forces, and rescued every civilian. They had turned chaos into order through nothing but adaptation and refusal to quit. The arena fell silent as the team emerged from the simulation chambers. They were exhausted, barely able to stand, but they stood together. Then the silence broke. Applause began, softly at first, then growing. Species that had competed against each other stood and honored what they had witnessed. Even the Scareen warband, fierce and proud, offered gestures of respect. Commander Velrus walked onto the arena floor. His scaled face showed an expression few had ever seen. Wonder. In 300 cycles of war games, he announced, his voice carried by speakers across the arena, no team has ever completed the crucible. Many have tried. All have failed. Today we witnessed not just a completion, but a victory. A victory achieved not by the strongest species or the fastest or the most intelligent, but by a team that represented the best quality of the Galactic Alliance itself. Unity. He turned to Maya. Sergeant Chen, your methods have proven effective beyond question. Your students have shown us something we had forgotten, that our differences make us stronger, not weaker. That adaptation is as valuable as strength. That the human factor, the ability to see hope in hopelessness and find solutions where none seem to exist, is a gift this galaxy needs. Maya stepped forward, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. Commander, my team did not win because they learned to think like humans. They won because they learned to think like themselves, all of themselves. Every species here has unique gifts. We simply learned to combine them instead of compete with them. The award ceremony that followed felt less important than the moment itself. Maya's team received the highest honors, but the real victory was in the conversations happening across the arena. Species that had trained separately for centuries began discussing joint operations. Traditional rivals started seeing each other as potential partners. The Institute itself announced new programs focused on integrated training. Weeks later, as Maya prepared to return to Earth, Commander Velrus met with her one final time. You have changed this institution, he said. More than that, you have changed how we think about warfare itself. Maya smiled. I only taught what humans learned through necessity, Commander. We were never strong enough to dominate, so we learned to cooperate. We were never fast enough to run, so we learned to adapt. We were never unified enough to think as one, so we learned to value different perspectives. Velrus nodded slowly. Tell me, Sergeant, what drives humans to keep fighting when logic says they should surrender? Maya thought for a moment. Hope, she said simply. Humans believe that as long as we breathe, anything is possible. We refuse to accept that any situation is truly hopeless. Maybe that is foolish, maybe that is stubborn, but it has kept us alive when we should have gone extinct 100 times over. The commander extended his clawed hand in the human gesture of farewell. Then I'm grateful the galaxy has such fools among us. We need them more than we knew. Maya shook his hand and smiled. Just remember, Commander, when someone asks if one human can make a difference, the answer is always yes. Because one human who refuses to quit can inspire an entire galaxy to do the same. She left Korthar the next morning, but her impact remained. The Institute created new doctrine based on integrated tactics. The Galactic Alliance began forming mixed-species units for complex operations, and across 70 worlds, military academies started teaching something new alongside traditional warfare. They taught the human factor, the belief that any challenge can be overcome through adaptation, cooperation, and the simple refusal to accept defeat. Years later, when historians studied the turning point that transformed the Galactic Alliance from a collection of separate species into a truly unified force, they pointed to the war games where one human instructor and 12 diverse cadets proved that strength comes not from uniformity, but from the courage to embrace difference and the wisdom to turn it into advantage. Maya Chen returned to Earth, but her legacy lived on in every cadet who learned that the most powerful weapon in any arsenal is not a gun or a ship or a strategy. It is the human factor, the unbreakable belief that together anything is possible.